I think we are all set to go. Good on your end?
Yes, all good here.
Okay, very good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen here in council chambers, and for all of those following along remotely. Welcome to the March 18th meeting of the San Carlos Planning and Transportation Commission. Tonight, we have all commission members here, so there are no Bill 2449 teleconference requests. I'd just like to remind members of the public that might be following along that this meeting is a limited public forum for public comment. Speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item, and if speaking during general public comment, they must address the matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules or the city's rules on decorum and civility, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended for the evening. Thank you. And with that, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Present.
Commissioner Garvey?
Present.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Present.
Vice Chair Clements?
Present.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Present. Thank you. Item agenda number 5 is approval of the minutes from the February 5th, 2024 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. Colleagues, any revisions that you'd like to make? Yes, Commissioner Castaneda.
Yes, on page 2, the first paragraph under commissioners ask clarifying questions. In the final line of that, the word you need to add an E to SLOP. Okay.
Thank you, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner and Commissioner Roof.
Done.
Very good. Entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2024 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
I'll
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
I will abstain as I was not here.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
I was not present, but I will vote yes out of tradition.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Item 6, new business. We have 3 items for consideration this evening, and 2 of them are regarding resolutions connected to our transportation function here as a commission. And so with those, with that, I think we have a presentation by staff. And the first item is adopt a resolution recommending City Council approval of the City of San Carlos Traffic Signal Master Plan. Good evening, Anya. Yes.
Okay, so we have been in the Public Works Department working on a traffic signal master plan for over a year. Tonight we are going to present to you a pretty complete draft of it for your approval, and we hope to next take it to City Council for their approval. Tonight with me I have Ryan Dole from Kimley Horn, who is the consultant who has been working with us, and I'll pass on to him for the presentation.
Good evening, commissioners. Appreciate the time to be able to present this master plan and the process, taking you through what we've been working with and partnering with staff on to outline the vision for the larger traffic signal system throughout the city. So this process started, as Hanya said, over a year ago. It started out with discussions with city staff, ranging from maintenance to public works, to understand how they operate the current signal system, what the current state of the signal system is, and how they intend to use it in the future. And ultimately, out of that, getting to know them, this is, it's defined here as an objective, but it could also be defined as a vision that we were able to distill out of those comments and input that they've provided. So ultimately, what we heard over and over again is a desire for consistency in the signal system, from whether how it operates to how it is installed, what kind of equipment is out there, but consistency so that users throughout the city, whether they're using push buttons to count down pedestrian signals, LED lights, et cetera, all the different functions and infrastructure at the signals, that it was consistent. So just a quick summary of some of the other things that the city staff had let us know was to do a comprehensive inventory of the signal system, because some of it was recorded in older as-builts and record drawings. Some of it was unknown, to be honest. And so our team did a comprehensive field visit, opened up all the cabinets, and took an inventory to help us understand what existing conditions are. But also, the city wanted to determine what improvements and opportunities there were to not only create that consistent infrastructure, but also to see where this city should head in the future. So just trying to understand what kind of opportunities are out there. And then ultimately, another overarching desire was to look for opportunities to integrate with the San Mateo County Smart Corridor System. That program has been in place for over a decade now and has provided some of the infrastructure that's actually along the corridor, and we'll talk about that in a second. So real briefly, we just wanted to discuss some of the benefits of doing this master planning process and ultimately providing this system. One of them, as I said, consistency through defining the requirements that would guide the implementation and upgrades for the overall network. That's the first thing. The second part was just, as I was saying, leveraging what's out there. So the smart corridor system, how could that be leveraged to the benefit of the city and improve the overall network? Coordinating with partner agencies, just due to the location of the city between 280, 101, bisected by El Camino, you have to partner closely with Caltrans to operate. You also have neighboring agencies also that your roads are going into and out of, so people traveling through your city. So coordinating with those partner agencies on operations, trying to strategically address congestion and concerns requires that high level of partnership. And then ensuring that maintenance needs, making sure that day-to-day operations, that you keep your signals operating functionally, efficiently, and effectively, that is definitely one of the ultimate goals and benefits of this plan. So a quick overview. This is a flow chart of kind of the process that we went through. I had already referenced one of the first steps was to do a comprehensive inventory. So we went to each of the intersections, got your base conditions, understood what was out there, what was maybe not out there. Some of it was we found equipment that may have been in a cabinet for the signal, but not necessarily operational. Sometimes that's just because it got replaced and was left. But we inventoried that and got a good grasp on what was out there. Out of that, as I was saying, we had comprehensive discussions with city staff. We also brought in outside stakeholders, so we had conversations with emergency services representatives, just overall understanding how people or city stakeholders interact with the system and what potential needs would come out of that. That helped us identify the goals and objectives that we kind of did an overview of. Taking your existing conditions and your goals and objectives, you could kind of feel out what are your needs and your gaps, what's missing, what is preventing you from going forward in certain ways. So we did and identified a needs assessment and identified those to going forward. And we actually tied those back to the kind of the strategic plan, general plan for the city, and identified ways that we could advance the overall bigger picture that the city has to go forward. Out of that came implementation strategies. Those are kind of all-encompassing ways that we want to attack those needs and those gaps, and those generated our project lists and then ultimately into project costs and project phasing. So we'll talk a little bit more on phasing in a moment. So goals and objectives. Goals are kind of broad statements, bigger picture statements that kind of try to summarize key targets for the city. Objectives are more measurable, more specific. So some of those actually are very specific that they kind of encompass a single project. Some of them may represent a larger picture of a host of projects. And so without necessarily, we can go through some of these more in detail if you have some questions on the specifics. But the one thing that we try to do as we identify these goals and objectives is try to give them some flexibility, especially in the current traffic and transportation industry. There's a lot of innovation taking place from potential of autonomous vehicles to new detection types and technologies. For example, use of GPS to provide origin destination information that feeds into systems that can change traffic signal operations and adapt to adjusting volumes and conditions. So there's a lot of technology, and it's constantly evolving and changing over time. So going back to why we want these to be flexible, we want them to guide implementation, but we don't necessarily always want them to dictate in a way. So we don't want you just to implement a technology for the sake that it sounds fun or cool. We want it to meet your needs, we want it to meet your goals, and really ultimately serve the city and be usable. Everybody's probably bought that new toy and that sits in your basement and you never come back to it and it sounded good at the time. So we want this to be a usable living document that you can adapt over time for. So that's why you see, for example, under the goal number 2, objective 1, implement tools to provide reliable signal coordination. Again, tools are constantly evolving. We want to identify them and measure them as they come out. And so this is something that gives us a measuring stick for. And so ultimately, some of this it ties back to some of the things that we heard from staff talking about, but we ultimately feel like this is a comprehensive list of what the objectives are for the staff. So once we've identified, as I said, the needs, the goals, objectives, we look towards trying to identify a roadmap for implementation. So this is kind of the guiding near term, midterm, long term. So near term is supposed to be about 2 years. What can we do more immediately? So these are kind of the low hanging fruit. What can we not necessarily take a lot of capital or time or planning for? Midterm are ones that might be somewhat ready, but set you up for the long-term ones. Those might take more planning, grant funding, et cetera. These are guidelines. We do recommend, as projects are being developed, as funding becomes available, to kind of look at this and look for ways of effectiveness and efficiency. Sometimes you might have a midterm project that is on the same corridor as a near-term one. And so you might look for ways to blend those together and ultimately get a better project on a whole. So that kind of leads to our project phasing, or what's shown here. And this is a summary. We do recommend to see this more as kind of a menu of, again, going back to looking for effective approaches to deploying projects. But this list we generated in collaboration with staff, and we originally came up with that implementation strategy on the previous slide, and we have moved stuff around. So there were some projects based on input from the priorities of the community, and we have moved some that maybe were a long-term project. We have moved them up and to ultimately hit some high desired needs. The costs on that are shown off to the right, one of the things I actually want to highlight with projects, we try to package them so that they don't get too large. There is a consideration for staff time. There's a consideration for the amount of capital it might take to implement. So we do try to combine projects in more kind of bite size. Typically under 200,000 is one of the targets we have. We do present a couple larger projects, some of the ones that require bigger investments, like the communication upgrade projects, which require a lot of undergrounding, installing utility, basically, along the corridor. Those just happen to be a little bit more expensive, so those are some of the larger projects that you'll see in the project list. So going back to the inventory that we did, opening all the signals. So there's 24 signals that are owned by the city. Overall, there's 33 within city limits. Those other 9 are owned and operated by Caltrans. What's shown on the screen here are just the city ones. There are, of course, the El Camino and some of the signals at the ramps for Caltrans. But you'll notice the kind of the orange line, that represents fiber. That predominantly, pretty much completely, was installed by the Smart Corridor system through CCAG. So those are part of the incident route management system that are deployed during key incidents. Most recently, there were a couple closures on 101 for an extended couple days. And so the system was utilized to help implement signal timing, implement some of the message signs, and provide traveler information. So if you saw that during the closure, that was utilizing the system. The benefit that program has is this system is available for city to use. It connects all the signals represented by the light blue. And actually that leads to one of the main things that we found through the existing conditions is there were some signals that were on this corridor that weren't interconnected. And mostly that was because a developer came along, installed it, and some of that consistency the city is looking for, the guidelines weren't there to help guide that deployment, and therefore it was overlooked and those signals were not interconnected. So kind of a missed opportunity. But our master plan hopefully captures that, gives a good roadmap for future deployments. So existing conditions, yeah, we've identified the existing infrastructure, we inventoried traffic signal equipment, and that ultimately is leading to the phasing. This first phase, as I was saying, takes a little bit more of the low-hanging fruit. So a lot of them represent improvements to push buttons, replacement of push buttons. So you have the audible, predominantly the accessible pedestrian signals, the ones that help make noise and have the vibrating and provide guidance to folks that may have visibility concerns. There's also the replacement of some of the controllers to upgrade them to be consistent and be able to integrate with the Smart Corridor system. And again, a lot of these improvements don't require a lot of construction. They can a lot of times be replaced through city staff or on-call contractors. Phase 2 as it represents some expansion of the system, primarily, sorry, I forgot to highlight. In phase 1, we also tried to include some connections to some of your remote intersections. So those are represented by kind of the reddish, larger signals. So those would get like a wireless communication to allow you to talk to the signal, monitor it remotely. So this phase 2 kind of moves towards some of the larger projects, some more of the signal timing. It is also trying to capture some of the intersections that are on the Smart Corridor system, ultimately bringing them back in. Since that requires some fiber upgrades, that's why it's kind of in the second phase. And then ultimately, phase 3 represents trying to do the larger projects, expanding out and putting in new communications up San Carlos Ave and throughout the city. And that is my overview.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Colleagues, let's start with clarifying questions for Ryan. Let's say 2, and then we'll rotate on through. So, Commissioner Garvey?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ryan. That was a very informative presentation. Two questions, mostly relating, I think, to Caltrans. You mentioned that of the 33 signals, 9 of them are owned or operated by Caltrans. And I read in the packet about the regional CCAG organization that helps coordinate things. Does CCAG also, does Caltrans participate in this because they're a state agency, or does CCAG only work with the coordinating the non-Caltrans owned lights? I'm hoping that they can do everything because I'm guessing that Caltrans, what happens on El Camino is a real driving force to congestion in our city.
Yes, they participate, and actually they're kind of the main coordinator for the system.
Good.
So generally, during some of these incidents, Caltrans is the primary. So they are the ones implementing the changes to the signal timing in coordination with the cities. But ultimately the system ties back to Caltrans and their central system. And so they're kind of the main point person.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And my second question was relating to these controller cabinets I was reading about. Some of these are NEMA and some of these are Caltrans. I was hearing you talk about consistency. Do all of these need to be made the same, or is it okay to have 2 different controllers? And when we try to centrally and wirelessly locate traffic management in the systems in the city, will both of these work, or how do you see that resolving?
So from the NEMA and Caltrans, they're just kind of different platforms for the cabinets, and you'll see they're different shapes and sizes. That's what NEMA versus Caltrans is predominantly. What really it comes down to is what is the controller that is operating inside the cabinet, and that has a bigger impact on things. So that's more what we've been focusing on standardizing.
I now understand more fully. Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ryan. I was enjoying looking at the system and trying to understand the differences in locations and maybe why different choices were made over time. And actually, you just answered one of my questions with Commissioner Garvey. I had maybe this is a staff question, so let me just start with a generic question. The plan talked about installing video detection for bicycles and other vehicles. How is video detection typically used? What operability does that give us that we don't have without it?
Yes, so there are a couple traditional methods. The most traditional method for detection, we'll go from vehicles and bikes, are inductive loops. So they kind of, as a bicycle or a car passes over, it can sense the metal and it detects it that way. One concern of that is it can degrade pavement, and other times with certain bikes don't have any ferrous metal in it, and so they can't be detected. So you might have a bicyclist sitting on top of a loop and they get skipped. So video gives you a little bit more flexibility. It doesn't require any in-ground installations, and so it has a little bit of the benefit of quick operation changes. And all it does is it takes a video feed and uses a software system to detect objects. And so you can program it to differentiate between different types of vehicles, so a large vehicle versus small vehicle, bicyclists versus vehicles. So it does give you that. We did center on that from a preference from staff to make the move to that. We didn't do a lot of investigation of other types. There are ones that use radar and as I said, loops, but there was kind of a desire to move towards video.
And the purpose of determining what kind of vehicle that's on the road is so that signals can operate, according to what is triggering the signals? Is that?
Yes. So on a very on the lower level, it just senses that someone's there, and then activates green. So
I see.
you've probably driven through a signal at 11 p.m., you come up to a red light, no one else there, and you're stuck. So
I have a couple lights on the map that are, I'm like, so that one, yeah, needs to change.
So it's
Yeah.
a little bit of that. It provides you something that says, hey, there's something there, and I need to switch over to green. Now, in some of the more advanced kind of traffic operations, you can utilize the video feed to give you traffic counts that would then filter into those algorithms that then can dynamically change signal timing. So some corridors, I might get a little too technical, but whenever someone hears I'm a traffic engineer, they always ask about signal operation. So, but you have certain corridors that have really constant or predictable traffic patterns. Maybe near a school, it only has cars happening during certain hours. You can do timing based on a traffic study, get your typical counts, and kind of set your green time appropriately. But other times you have varying volumes, and so you can't just set one set time for a certain period. So your algorithms will adjust. And so it say, oh, we only have 100 cars going through right now versus on the side street, we're having a higher volume than normal, and it will adjust the timing.
Got it. And so as long as the signal controllers are able to respond to the video feed or tie into the rest of the system is what I think I understood you to say to Commissioner Garvey, regardless of the owner of the box, as long as the technology is communicating to each other, that's the important thing. Is that?
That's the intent, to set up the city to move towards the industry standards right now that are trying to provide more interoperability between systems, devices, and so that it can you don't have to worry about being stuck on a certain product all the time. It gives you some more flexibility.
Got it. Thank you. That was very helpful. Thanks. I'll yield to the chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Castaneda.
So as I understand it, am I right then that the Phase 1 plan is to establish this consistency across all of the signals? And will these signals then be the smart signals that you're talking about that will recognize the vehicles and be able to change the signal? That will be, is that
Through
right?
the whole plan, it will be. That's kind of the unifying goal for the whole plan. Phase 1 is just a first step, our first steps towards it. More focus on some of the base equipment. So that's where we're talking about push buttons, detection, signal heads, those kinds of things.
Okay. And so as I understand it, there's two signals on Industrial Road that you said were not connected to the main system, and that's in Phase 2, is that correct? Or is that in Phase 1?
That one's actually in Phase 3 right now
Phase
because
3.
it's kind of tied towards more the communication infrastructure that is the hard-wired in the ground kind of deployments.
Okay. And then I have one question, which is really for staff, which is on funding. There's, what I read in the packet is that there isn't a long-term budget for system upgrades. But are there any developer fees from approved commercial building projects that could be used to fund at least some of the proposed upgrades to the equipment? Particularly since many of these projects obviously do affect the transportation corridor and fees are scheduled. Could they be used for that? Any funding there?
So the Phase 1 is going to be funded with the mid-cycle budget. For Phase 2 and Phase 3, we haven't really looked at funding strategies yet. That's one of the first steps of Phase 2 is establishing funding a plan for implementation of the master plan. So we haven't gotten that far yet, but we will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Roof.
It looks like a really thorough assessment and a solid plan. I guess my first question is that the standards to which it's being proposed, is there a single standard and this is what is necessary to meet it, or were there options? There's the Cadillac version, there's the mid-range, there's the Econo version, because I'm just seeing kind of one proposal here, but maybe there's a reason for that.
So, and actually the standards, if you're really curious and want to do a deep dive, one of the attachments of the plan is a set of standard specifications for the system. So the intent of that is it's going to be a master document that can be utilized by projects through the capital improvement program, or be handed to developers to understand this is what we've standardized to as a city. From the standpoint of Cadillac versus maybe more an economy model, there are different products that might have more functionality, so it's going to be more expensive. For the most part, we're standardizing to be consistent with Caltrans. That's kind of what most agencies utilize, because there's a robust kind of guidance. They have their own standard plans, so standard documents. But then on top of that, we did some kind of customization based on what the city's already doing, and maybe based on existing conditions want to maybe transition to. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything, but I wouldn't say there's necessarily a Cadillac, but besides if you want to get the most features out there.
That's helpful. Thank you. That's all I have. Right.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. And Ryan, also thanks for a good presentation. And actually, my colleagues picked up on some different parts of my second question, but I'll start with the first. In phase one, you described it as a timing assessment. Is it timing assessment or actually adjustment and alignment and like a redo so that we get out of 2024 with things in sync?
So there's a little bit of, when we say like a timing, so for example, I just want to give you a more. So some of the ones that we've identified, and actually I think is already in the works, is to implement a corridor, some timing on El Camino. And that is because the signals are already connected to the smart corridor system. They are Caltrans. Caltrans utilizes a certain software that has the capabilities of doing that more dynamic, adaptive signal timing. So basically the infrastructure is there. All that needs to be done is develop the programming for it. So that's kind of a quick action project that will be going on this year. So some of those other projects are trying to do the same thing of either integrating signals into that central system, just because if you add some communication, for example, the wireless locations that we identified in phase one, that would bring them in. And a couple of those were strategic, like the ones on San Carlos towards the, Alameda de los Polos, right? That's a key congestion point. And so providing a wireless communication to that spot will allow to, and providing some additional controller will allow some upgrades to the operation. So yes, it primarily goes to helping adjust the timing.
Okay, great. And just look, this is my ear-heard assessment, and you actually got like, it sounds like a pretty meaty action plan after the assessment, so don't gloss over that. Like when you're pitching to city council, you're asking them for money, let them know what they're getting for it, all right? Okay, good. Actually, a couple of my colleagues picked up on this, the phase two item with regard to the video, and I now appreciate what you're saying about what it will do. It's a pretty good chunk of the $8 million when you adjust it. I think it's $3 million something out of 8, and it's more than 50% of phase two, number one. And number two, like technology is moving, whether it's the AI side or whether it's video cams getting cheaper or what have you. So when we're approving this, what are we actually, are we sending a framework as a resolution, or are we making a budget recommendation? Because it feels too early for the latter, on that topic anyway.
Yes, it's not it's not going to tie us into anything. And this is going to be a living document. We're going to visit it every 5 years because technology is coming out every day and we want to see what else is out there. So every 5 years we'll reevaluate all the projects. The costs will get updated. Things may get shifted from one phase to another. New things may get added. So this will be a living document.
Thanks. That's really helpful. And I guess my reflection on that, because I heard the 5 years or I saw it in the pre-read, was I trust that you won't miss the opportunity to review that specific item, even if it's in 4 years, so that you bring the best, most cost-effective but good technology forward when it's time. So, okay, nothing else from me. Thanks. Vice Chair Clements, you have another clarifier?
Thanks, Chair. I did just have one more question, which is, I know we're looking for not just funding for phases 2 and 3, but also funding to staff an operations center. And I wondered if, and maybe Ryan has seen this from other communities, but are there sources of funds that typically are available to staff traffic control operation centers?
There can be different options. I will note, because I didn't want to go too much into the detail. So one of the benefits that the city has is through the Smart Corridor system, there's already a workstation. So it's a computer with access to the entire system, and that can control and monitor and operate those signals. Some agencies who have maybe a more robust system or have more capabilities or get to that point where they want to do something different, a more dynamic operations, they will establish an actual room, kind of like some agencies have emergency operation centers, kind of the same thing from traffic. So one of the reasons we have it on a longer term is with the city trying to build up the infrastructure and also establishing a traffic group. It will take a little bit of time to get to the point where you're ready to actually operate and maintain it. Mm-hmm. But it all depends on the needs, ultimately, what the needs are from a day-to-day operations standpoint. There are some agencies, I can think of one in Sacramento area, they have, I think their population is in the low, mid-100s, 1,000 people, but they have 100 signals, and they have someone who's dedicated to just monitoring the signal. But it takes someone basically all the time keeping up with things. So,
Are they in the general fund based budget? Is that, or, because you can't get grant funding year to year, right, and then ongoing support somebody?
Sometimes there are initiatives or MTC might have a certain program. So for example, not too long ago, they had the IDEA, the innovative, I forget what the acronym stands for, but they funded certain agencies throughout the Bay to do some more of this advanced deployment. So they have systems, it's called ATSPM, so it's Automated Traffic Signal Performance Measures, sorry, a lot, but it basically collects a ton of data. The system, all those detections, video cameras, loops, they collect all the volumes, the counts, when everything's going, and then that feeds into a operations center there where they can adjust timing, do traffic studies with that data. Yeah, all the data you want.
Yeah, and is there a minimum size, usually of a number of signals or size of community to create an operations center?
Not necessarily. I think it just depends on how you plan to use it and how your needs are. Some agencies are perfectly fine with, as long as you have good detection at your intersection, that you can maybe even just implement time-based plans and communication so your signals stay in sync with each other. That's more than sufficient for some agencies. So that's, again, why we didn't want to outsize this plan. While we did discuss some of this more advanced technology, from the feedback from staff is that's not how it's being used. So let's set up a good, robust network that maybe in the future it will, but and yeah.
But it doesn't have to. Great, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Very good, thank you. Why don't we move to public comment? And we actually don't have anyone raising their hand or bringing a speaker slip forward, I don't think, here in council chambers. Lynette, why don't we give the public an opportunity to raise their hand? If you're following along remotely, please raise your hand on Zoom. Lynette will very shortly capture any hands raised, and we'll put you in the queue for public comment on this item. And Lynette, are there any hands raised?
Yes, we have one, Sonia.
Very good. So we'll, Sonia, will put you first on the list and give anyone else another 5 seconds, and then we're going to call our list complete. Very good. Sonia, welcome, and you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I am a resident of San Carlos and active bicyclist and Safe Routes to School activist, and I appreciate all the attention given to making sure that bikes and micromobility, electric scooters, electric skateboards, whatever people are riding on our streets are seen, detected, and ideally, if I know that there's some signals that show that the bicycle was detected, and there's some feedback to the user. I don't know if that's what's included in this study, but it gives that same reason that pedestrians need that feedback to know they've been seen and detected is also very useful for bikes. And then the other thing I wanted to just ask about, as bike lanes come to places like El Camino or some of the signals in the city that aren't currently there, how does this plan incorporate changes to, I assume it does, but I don't know if this is infrastructure with different signals, and does that include a bike signal, bikes on green, or how sophisticated does that get, and how changeable are those systems as streetscapes change for including more and more micromobility, especially now that Caltrain is being electrified. There will be a lot more expected bike commuting as the time for the trains running gets shorter intervals between. And I think those are all there's one more I can't remember. Oh, and then the last one is pedestrians. I really appreciate that the pedestrians get that leading interval. That's been fantastic at the intersections. I appreciate that has happened. And also pedestrians, can they push the button even if it's red, if this light is still red? Is there a way to make sure that pedestrians can always push the buttons and get across, even if the you know what I mean? Like, the pedestrian light doesn't always come on if there's no pedestrian that has pushed the button. So if the light is already green and the pedestrian wants to push the button, sometimes it won't let them because it's too late, and that doesn't make any sense. I just wanted to make sure that gets considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And I saw a couple of heads nodding and some notes being taken on your comments. So thank you for joining us for this evening. And Lynette, can you just confirm that Sonia was our one speaker?
Yes, there are no more hands raised.
Okay, very good. And entertain a motion to close public comment.
I move that we close public comment on the traffic signal master plan.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. We have a resolution before us that I'm sure you've all read, and we can do two things. We should do two things. If you have any specific comment or comments that you'd like to make that you didn't get made through your questioning, that'd be great. And otherwise, maybe you could just indicate your support, and then when we're ready, we'll move to a vote. Okay? So, Commissioner Roof, let's start at your end.
Thank you. I'm overall supportive of the master plan, understanding that it's not really a budget approval, it's more of a guidance, kind of having the technical expertise and something to work against. I'm strongly supportive of the video detection technology. It seems to make a lot of sense. I'm more lukewarm in my support for the operations center. I'm not sure I'm convinced that that would be important along El Camino. Yes, but that's not what this would be for. Is my understanding that would be the Caltrans responsibility. So in a few years, that could be assessed more thoroughly. It's fine to have it in the master plan. I wouldn't say I don't support the master plan because of that, but I'm just expressing some skepticism whether that is really necessary. But otherwise, it looks really good.
Thank you. Commissioner Castaneda.
I'm supportive of the plan, and I'm just very happy to see it. We've been approving a lot of projects, and we have a lot of building going on in San Carlos, and I've been wondering how we're going to manage all of this, and I'm just very pleased to see that we've got the plans in action to take care of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Garvey.
I too am supportive of the plan. One of the things I liked about it is I guess it's an overarching goal to maintain a system that accommodates future growth in San Carlos, of which there will be a lot in the coming years, while still maintaining acceptable levels of service. And when you maintain acceptable levels of service, you're reducing congestion. And an ancillary benefit to reducing congestion is that you're also reducing air pollution emissions. So I think having this overarching plan for traffic has a lot of benefits for the city of San Carlos, and I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Vice Chair Clements.
I also support the master plan. I'm glad to see that we're taking kind of a strategic look at how we're doing in this area and, planning for the work to make sure that everything is aligned. I love what what my commissioner colleague just said about the impact on reduced emissions as traffic becomes more efficient. I also want to say that because traffic is such a frequent complaint, for any opportunity to do a development, any development that comes forward, folks are concerned about traffic. And so I think as we grow, it's increasingly important to make sure that our traffic is flowing smoothly. And I want to say one more thing, which I believe Sonia noted in her comments, which is that the upgrading of all pedestrian heads to countdown timers, I think, is a huge improvement for pedestrians, and especially those who may be slower, seniors or the disabled, so they know how much time they've got to cross. And so, and the accessibility. So I really appreciate those features to the plan. And again, thank you for taking a several-year look at what we need to do and making sure that we are working as well as we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I echo what my colleague said. Great to see a plan. Great to know that technology and cabinets will have battery backups at some point, and that we'll be able to leverage wireless communications where it makes sense. And I'm supportive. And so I think with that, Andrea, procedure to take a roll call? Okay. Oh, we have a motion. Thank you very good. Anyone care to move?
Sure. I move that the Planning and Transportation Commission adopt a resolution recommending City Council approval of the City of San Carlos Traffic Signal Master Plan.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Great. Thank you very much. Look forward to your presentation to City Council and the 2024 results. Thank you, everyone. Our second item of new business is for us to consider and adopt a resolution recommending City Council approve of the Arroyo Avenue and Chestnut Street Safe Routes to School Improvements Project, Project CC 2201. And I think with that, Hanya has a presentation.
Yes, did not pick the right earrings for this. Hello and good evening again. I'm here to present the Arroyo Avenue and Chestnut Safe Routes to School improvement projects tonight. Next. Nope. The other way. Okay. So City of San Carlos's general plan identifies a goal to provide a safe, efficient, and aesthetically pleasing transportation and circulation network for various transportation users in addition to automobiles. Similarly, City of San Carlos's strategic plan's mobility, traffic, and transportation infrastructure goal has language in there on improving traffic and transportation infrastructure while encouraging other modes of transportation. The emphasis here is on the other modes of transportation. To this end, Objective 2 tasks us with identifying intersections to improve traffic, and Objective 4 is direct in calling for safe routes to school improvements. To achieve all these goals and objectives, City of San Carlos adopted the city's Bike and Ped Master Plan in the year 2020, and we have also developed a safe routes to school improvement implementation recommendations and maps that was presented to this commission January of 2023 and approved by the City Council in February of 2023. This particular project is located at the intersection of Arroyo Avenue and Chestnut Street. The intersection is identified in the Safe Routes to School plan for pedestrian improvements. Arroyo Avenue is also identified in the city's master plan, Bike and Ped Master Plan, as a priority pedestrian route. The purpose for this project is to improve pedestrian safety, increase accessibility in compliance with Americans with Disability Act ADA, and also improve path of travel for all modes of travel. The need for this project is identified due to its very close proximity to Central Middle School, Arroyo Elementary School, Burton Park, and its playground and fields, as well as City of San Carlos's Youth Center. In our observations, we observed 159 pedestrians that crossed this intersection in a 3-hour peak of one day. Most of these pedestrians observed are school children, and majority of them were observed actually kind of running or really speed walking, presumably due to feeling unsafe when crossing. We did a full traffic study of the intersection. The speed limit posted on Arroyo during the day is 25 miles an hour. However, due to its proximity to school, it is zoned at 15 miles per hour when school kids are present during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. The vehicular speeds that we measured along Arroyo Avenue are about 28 miles an hour, which is in line with the posted speed limit. The vehicle counts on Arroyo show roughly about 3,100, 3,200 vehicles per day on an average weekday, and pedestrian counts were 159. As you can see, the high number of vehicles and the high number of pedestrians is a potential for a lot of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians, and the number of vehicles is well above the 1,200 thresholds that we typically use for installing crosswalks on a roadway. Luckily, the 5-year collision history is none, and we are hoping to keep it that way. We did a site distance analysis for the intersection, and currently it does not have adequate site distancing, so we need to improve that as we improve the intersection. We also did a 4-way stop sign warrant analysis to see if it meets warrants for stop signs, and it does not. The scope for the project is to install new high-visibility crosswalks on 3 legs along with bulb outs to reduce speeds and make pedestrians more visible. It will also include ADA-compliant curb ramps all around, and it will have an activated rectangular rapid flashing beacon on the crossing along Arroyo. It replaces exposed aggregate concrete sidewalk along Arroyo, tree removal and replacement, valley gutter repair, and pavement rehabilitation to improve drainage. As you can see in the picture on top, we have a lot of standing water in there after pretty much every rain that deteriorates the pavement, and it also creates hazardous condition for pedestrians. For the crossing that crosses Arroyo Avenue, we did several iterations of where it should go. Option one that we considered was at the southern corner. On this picture, north is to the right, the south side of the Chestnut Street cross intersection. At that corner, there is a large utility pole, there is a fire hydrant, and there is a street light pole. So we have to push it closer to Cedar Street to avoid conflict with those utilities. And when we do that, we get to be roughly about 250 feet away from Cedar and quite a few feet away from Woodland. This creates a problem because folks who are coming down Woodland or coming out of Arroyo, once they get to Chestnut, they're going to cross. They're not going to go past where they wanted to go cross at this crossing and then come back. So that would reduce the use of the crosswalk if we put it there. Option two is to put it at the north side of Chestnut at the intersection. This would put it at the naturally occurring crossing where folks are crossing today, so it has that benefit. The only conflict here is that tree on the field side that may need to be removed or may need to be trimmed. It would definitely need to be trimmed, but it also may need to be removed. We're still working with the arborist on that. Option three would push this further north, and the reason we considered this one is we wanted to kind of put it on the property line to avoid a high impact on one particular property. However, putting it that far away from the intersection kind of makes it more of a mid-block crossing than an intersection crossing. Similar to the option one, folks that are coming down Cedar wouldn't cross Chestnut to go cross there and come back. But also this location moves it close to the exit of the one-way right-out exit of Arroyo Avenue parking lot. And that exit is not a stop sign control. And when folks are making a right turn only right out of there, they're only going to look at the left to see if any cars are coming at them. They're not going to look at the right to see if there's any folks in the crosswalk naturally. So that increases conflict points and reduces safety of folks crossing at that crosswalk. It also moves it to the more curvier section of Arroyo, combined with the fact that this area is always fully parked with vehicles. That reduces visibility, so we would have to include more red curbing if we put it here. Based on these design iterations, the staff have concluded that option two would be the most optimum location for this crosswalk. And that is what you see at 65% design on this plan that is on your screen. Some red curbing is proposed to improve sight distance for the vehicles exiting out of Chestnut, as well as to increase visibility of the pedestrians that are hoping to cross, both from vehicles approaching on both sides of Arroyo and vehicles exiting Chestnut. They do have a stop sign, but they still need to be able to see. And we are hoping that vehicles see pedestrians as they're waiting to cross in the sidewalk and not when they're already in the crosswalk, because they need to have ample time to stop. They need to see them before they enter the crosswalk. We have been collaborating with the San Carlos School District and their engineer on this project, and we continue to collaborate. They review our design as they have their property attached to this project. Arroyo Elementary School and the Youth Center have both expressed their support for this project. Their letters of support were in the packet. Property owner at 1722 Arroyo has responded in support of the project, including the tree removal and replacement into Burton Park. The property owner on the other side at 1655, where the crosswalk would go in front of, understands the need for the crossing, however, expresses opposition to the crosswalk along Arroyo due to his observation of children congregating and behaving disrespectfully around his property. Now, we observed pickup drop-off time every day for a whole week, and we didn't observe any misbehavior, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. In parallel, we have reached out to the principal of the school and to the San Carlos Bureau of the Sheriff's Office to hopefully collaborate some kind of educational campaign to get the kids to behave more appropriately around this area. But the fact is, just observing how many kids, hundreds of them, cross here, and California Vehicle Code allows legal crossing at any intersection, whether it's marked or not marked. So the crossing is already happening because the need is there. This project is only going to make it safer for everyone. Estimated project timeline so far, we have finished 65% design and collaborated with San Carlos School District. We sent letters to the adjacent property owners and discussed the project with them and heard their comments and concerns that I just passed on to you a few minutes ago. On March 4th, we sent letters to the 300-foot radius of the project advising them of the project and tonight's meeting and seek their input. We haven't received any yet. With the Commission's support, we're hoping to take the project and complete the design, seek City Council approval, advertise and bid all the spring, and construction for this summer. And project closeout will be fall of 2024. So it will be mostly in place and operational before the school begins. That's my presentation. I'll take any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you for that informative presentation and going over the options, and it gives us good background. Clarifying questions before we move to public comment. Commissioner Roof?
The additional red curb, I totally get it that seeing pedestrians is an important part of the safety picture there. But when you have the bulb out, that puts the pedestrians in better view. So is the combination of the red curb really necessary according to current standards?
Yeah, so there is a new bill that's passed, AB 413, that now requires that there would be 20 feet if there's no bulb out, and 15 feet if there is a bulb out of a marked or unmarked crossing to be curb red. So that's what you see on the northern side. And on the southern side, it's, well, not northern, south, the upper portion of the map. And the lower portion of the plan, that would be actually the east side. The longer red curbs are to provide better visibility for the vehicles as they exit Chestnut, because if they can't see and they take a risk and they just jump out, they're going to be right on top of somebody at the crosswalk.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Castaneda?
I also wanted to ask about the red curb. So how many parking spaces are going to be lost with the combination? You've got it on the south side and the north side.
So right now, the new is 35, so that's 1.5, plus 22, that's 1, plus 18, that's barely 1. So 1, 2, 3.5.
3.5, okay, because I am concerned about having enough parking around the park for people. So I'd like to minimize that.
Yeah,
as
and
much
we
as
have made every effort to take the least restrictive of site distance requirements and apply it here so that we save as much parking as possible.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question, the tree. I didn't see any information on the actual tree, what it is.
So there are two. Maybe we can look at them on this picture. The one on top, the top picture, the one that is
in front of the car?
In front of the car. That one is in front of 1722, and the arborist report on that indicated that it's not a healthy tree. It's half cut already, but the roots have brought up the entire sidewalk area, and there is no way to save it, and it's not even suitable for saving. So we talked to the property owner, and they're okay with us removing it and replacing it in Burton Park.
Okay.
The second tree, the arborist report has indicated that it's in okay health. However, it does block the visibility of pedestrians, and it also has a lot of shade kind of cantilevering over the pavement, and that will block the sun from reaching the solar panel. So if we are able to save it, we will have to seriously trim it on the street side to allow some sun to get into that panel. Well, we're looking into that with our engineer to finalize if it needs to be removed or if it can stay and just be trimmed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you. One question, the high visibility crosswalk that you're proposing, will that look similar, very similar to the one that's a block away at Cedar?
Yes.
Oh, good. I was hoping they would look
It
similar.
would have the flashing beacons. It has the bulb out, so pedestrians are more visible, and it's a lot shorter because of the bulb out, which is ideal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Vice Chair Clements.
Thanks for the presentation, and I appreciate the options and kind of hearing the logical reasoning that you went through to place the crosswalk where you are proposing it. Just one question. You said that the light blue crosswalk further to the right on the diagram was going to be closer to the exit from the Arroyo parking lot, right?
Yes.
Where exactly is the exit from the parking lot? I was trying to understand, and it was a little hard to see it.
So exactly where you see that language that says Arroyo right there.
I see it. Okay, thanks. And do you know what the distance is between that exit and the blue crosswalk?
120 feet.
Okay. Is there a standard as to how, because you were saying the tendency is to look left, not to, look right as much if you're taking a right turn only, which is what's allowed there. So is that considered a safe distance or starting to be not a safe distance? Okay. All right. And you said, one other question, that you could save the tree where the better one with the more shade canopy, where the pink, the proposed is, but that it would need to be trimmed back from the street some more.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And the solar panel is on both sides of the, okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Actually, no questions for me. So thank you very much. Why don't let me just check one more time. Comments or questions, rather. Okay, very good. Let's go to public comment. And we, again, don't have anyone here in council chamber requesting to speak. So for all of you who are following along remotely, thank you for waiting. Please raise your hand at this time, and in about 15 seconds or so, Lynette will note all of those who have asked to speak on this topic, and at which point we'll log you in, and then we'll go through those who'd like to make a comment. Lynette, do we have hands raised?
Yes, we have one, and we have Sonia again.
Okay, very good. And let's just, again, let me just reiterate, if anyone is looking to make a comment on this, please raise your hand at this time. And otherwise, Lynette is going to close our speaker list for remote participants. All right, thank you, Lynette. Let's then go back to Sonia. Sonia, welcome again. And you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. As a longtime Safe Routes to School advocate, this intersection has been on our radar for a very long time. However, deep, grave, important concerns cannot emphasize enough the problem with using concrete bulb outs that come out from the side that narrow the street with respect to the possibility of future bike lanes on Arroyo. There are active plans in the downtown improvement projects with respect to getting bike pedestrian infrastructure to downtown, of which Arroyo is a major feeder. And if you put big giant bulb outs that are made out of concrete that don't allow a bicyclist to go through, there are plenty of designs that are, pedestrian protective, bicycle accommodating, that still protect both vulnerable road users from vehicles. And I can't emphasize enough how much over on Old County Road, it's, so many concrete bulb outs went in that made it, very difficult to make room for bike lanes, which just is a problem. And I understand the need for permanent infrastructure that doesn't need as much, easier to clean and all these different things. But we shoot ourselves in the foot when we prioritize one vulnerable road user over another, and especially when it comes to all the micromobility increased use that's happening. I think it's not a long-term feasible plan. So I would highly recommend, assuming that, I know this is just probably a bulb out that only covers where the cars are already parked along that street, and parking is important. But I just wanted to raise those concerns about making sure that both bicyclists and pedestrians, especially on the way to school, so many people to these schools as well, are taken care of and are not forced into giant car traffic unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And Hania, I think, has a thought or has thought about this topic, so maybe you'd like to share a point.
Arroyo Avenue is identified on the bike master plan as a class 3 bike boulevard, and it already has all the sharrows installed. There is no plan on paper yet to put in bike lanes on this facility, as putting bike lanes would require removal of all parking, and we don't know how feasible that would ever be. And therefore, at the moment, the need of the moment is the pedestrian safety, considering how many kids are crossing here. And the bulb outs are not super large. They don't exceed outside of the parking lane, so they don't necessarily push the bicyclists into the center of the road.
Thank you very much for that feedback, and that's very helpful. I think with that, we've had our public comment period. I'd entertain a motion to close public comment.
I'd like to move that we close public comment. Actually, I'm sorry, Chair. Did we want to check one more time to see if there were raised hands during that second period?
I thought that Lynette did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I missed that. Sorry. So, and therefore, I would like to move that we close public comment on the Arroyo and Chestnut Safe Routes to School project.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And a roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. I think, and thank you for the presentation again. As we did last time, if there are a specific comment that you'd like to make, commissioners, please do so. And then if you have a perspective on your support or not, that'd be good to hear. So maybe Commissioner Garvey.
I don't have any additional questions. I like this project. I appreciated the reasoning that was laid out for option 2, and I support that. I also appreciate the comments from Commissioner Castaneda regarding the tree, and I like the idea of replacing some of those trees. I also think the new crosswalk, it increases safety for kids and for their families that walk not only to the school, but to the youth center that is nearby. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair. I also support the proposal as it's proposed. I think that, given that something farther to the right starts to be unsafe and it is more mid-block and less convenient, I do like the opportunity to work with the principal to message to students how they should be comporting themselves on the sidewalks, to kind of hit that issue at its source rather than plan around it. And I would encourage us to either, save the shade tree as much as possible, and or to figure out if we can put in another tree where the other one is ill and needs to be removed, because that's part of mode shift. And so with that, I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Roof.
I'm also supportive. I walk through that area pretty often, and it's obvious that these improvements would be really valuable. And I appreciate that the plan actively tried to minimize the amount of additional red curb because it is a cost, it has an impact. And this seems like they've arrived at a good compromise for how much is needed. And so I'm supportive.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner Castaneda.
I'm also supportive. I think the loss of, it would be better if we didn't lose any parking, but I think it's minimal and I think it's necessary. The crosswalk is necessary. I know this area also and go through that myself. And I'm encouraged that the bulb outs will not exceed the parking lanes for bicycles that might be going down the area. So yes, I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Castaneda. I'd echo, again, my colleagues, and, you know, the city staff is always asked to weigh a variety of variables and prioritize them, keeping trees, making sure that there is parking, being respectful and listening to our residents of the area and the safety of the children. And strikes me that the balance that you've brought forward is a good one, and therefore support the project. So I think with that, I think we can move to the motion. And I'll move that the Planning and Transportation Commission adopt a resolution recommending City Council approval of the Arroyo Avenue and Chestnut Street Safe Routes to School Improvements Project 62201.
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck with the project, and we'll look forward to seeing it up and running for the fall. Okay, very good. Moving right along. The third item on this evening's new business is the consideration of general plan conformity ruling, I guess, for the County of San Mateo's acquisition of 626640 and 642 Walnut, San Carlos APNs 050131060, 050131070, and 050131080 for housing purposes. And I think we have a presentation.
Good evening. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. State law requires that prior to a governmental agency acquiring property or disposing property, as well as developing, that the local planning department, planning commission, make a determination of general plan consistency. So the County of San Mateo has entered into a purchase agreement to acquire just a little over half an acre located at 626, 640, and 642 Walnut Street. The county requests the city conduct the general plan conformity review prior to their acquisition of the property for future affordable housing use. A little bit of background. This property was subject of an application back in 2020. The Planning Commission approved it in April, the entitlements for a new mixed-use development. That approval was appealed to the City Council, and on June 9th, 2020, the City Council denied the appeal and upheld the approval for a mixed-use development that consisted of 35 condominium housing units and ground floor commercial space. Those project entitlements have since expired, and any new development will be required to comply with the current zoning code as well as general plan. The project site is, as I said, 3 parcels located about mid-block on Walnut Street, just south of San Carlos Avenue, and directly across from the Wheeler Plaza development. The general plan land use designation for this site is mixed use, which allows a density up to 100 dwelling units. It permits both commercial as well as multifamily residential uses. The site is also identified in the housing element as an inventory site. The county indicates that they intend to use the site as affordable housing, and we find that that is consistent with the general plan land use designation as well as the housing element goals and policies. Any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Garvey?
Just one question. Thank you, Lisa. Did the city receive any comments from the state on this particular property when we submitted our housing element application?
Lisa Porras.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Garvey. I can take that question. There wasn't any particular comment on this site from the state. We were able to count the 35 units as units in the pipeline that could credit down or credit against our RHNA allocation of 2,735 units. So as we were looking for more sites to meet our RHNA need, we were able to utilize this particular project in the pipeline. And so it's my understanding that if a development would come through today, it would increase the number of units on that particular site, which would be a good thing for us.
The density of the site has since, I believe, doubled. And the units that were previously approved were larger condominium units, and likely the county, being affordable, would want some more efficiently sized units.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair. I just had one question, which is there a reason that the city didn't purchase this site and then want to make it available for affordable housing? I'm not really used to the county coming into incorporated city and purchasing things. Is it because of a lack of funds, or was there an agreement?
No, so the city had just recently entered into contract to purchase a property on Eaton Avenue. And so we had pretty much tied up available affordable housing funds and weren't also able to purchase this property.
Got it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Castaneda.
As long as you could confirm that, in fact, with the county purchasing it, that we would get at least as many units as are identified in our report to the state, I have no other questions, as long as you say there would be more, but there would be at least as many, right?
Well, one of the things that has changed with the adoption of our housing element and the accompanying changes to our zoning ordinance is a new requirement for minimum density. So it would, through that particular zoning requirement, it would definitely be more.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner Roof, please.
No questions.
Very good. I had one. Oh, you mentioned that the entitlements have expired. So that includes the joining of all three parcels and everything else. That'll come up when the county has a project to bring forward, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you. I'm good with questions. Why don't we go to public comment? So for those who might be following along remotely, this is your opportunity to please raise your hand for public comment on this particular item 6C in new business. We have no one here in the council chambers asking to speak on this topic. So Lynette, let's give it 15 seconds, and at that time you can take a roll of any hands raised. Okay, very good. Lynette, are there any hands raised?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Going once, going twice. No hands raised. All right. I'd entertain a motion to close public comment.
Chair, I move that we close public comment on the general plan consistency determination.
Thank you. I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Colleagues, not to preempt comments that you'd like to make, but if you have a comment, please make them and then let us know your thoughts. Commissioner Garvey?
Just one comment. This property, these three properties are an excellent location. I can see why there's an interest in this property. It's near downtown, it's near bus lines, it's near Caltrain. This property is an excellent location for an affordable housing project.
Thank you. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that our changes through the housing element will result in an even more productive site. We liked the old project. We're going to like this one even more, hopefully. And yeah, and I find this entirely consistent with our general plan.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Castaneda.
I agree with my colleagues' comments, and I support the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof.
I agree. It's consistent with the general plan, and also point out that currently it's a little bit of an eyesore with the fencing and such, and I hope that it can be moved forward quickly, or if there's going to be a long period, maybe that should be fixed. But that's a side comment. I'm supportive.
Very good. Thank you. And I also find that this action is consistent with the general plan. And so with that, we have a motion before us. Anyone care to make it?
I move the Planning and Transportation Commission adopt the resolution confirming the acquisition of property located at 626, 640, and 642 Walnut Street, San Carlos, for affordable housing purposes is in conformity with the San Carlos General Plan.
I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi.
Yes. Very good. Well, that's going to be a great project. Or it's a great opportunity for the city, and as all you pointed out, it's in a super location for it. Item number 7, we have a special guest with us tonight to make a presentation on the City of San Carlos's 2023 Housing Element Annual Progress Report. Lisa.
Thank you, Chair Iacoponi. Good to see the commissioners this evening. Lisa Porras, Planning Manager for the city's Advanced Planning Division. And I have a brief presentation for the commission this evening, a brief but very exciting presentation because this is the first progress report for our new 6th cycle housing element that we adopted in January 2023. The housing element covers an 8-year planning period, and so it's been 1 year into our first calendar year of this housing element, and we are required by state law to fill out a very long progress report, a very long and large Excel spreadsheet indicating all of the progress that we're making, and we do this on an annual basis. So this report is due every year on April 1st, and some of the primary reporting criteria, and you'll see in the attachment that there's quite a bit of data that the state collects, and this is centered around applications that have been submitted, and this is all housing applications, of course, housing applications deemed complete, what applications received a planning approval, which projects received a building permit, which ones received a final inspection or certificate of occupancy, and there's a lot of other data wanting to know, if there's affordable units, what income categories those were permitted within. But a big part, not in terms of just collecting data around housing applications and their status, is our progress to our RHNA assignment, our Regional Housing Needs Allocation, which is 2,735 new units plus, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And then another aspect of the annual report also covers all of our action items or programs that are part of the housing element that we committed to when we, as a city, adopted our housing element. And overall, there's 37 individual action items, but there are 148 subtasks within those action items. So there's quite a bit that we are committing to doing in order to ensure that we have adequate sites, that we are encouraging production of housing, that we're removing governmental constraints, that we're looking at the preservation, rehabilitation, conservation of units, and so forth. So we have a lot on our plate in terms of implementation. So what about our 2023 accomplishments? I can share that, let me go ahead and start with building permits, because issued building permits are the factor that counts against our progress made towards RHNA. You can have a project that has been approved, it's received its planning approval, but sometimes the property owners change hands, like we just heard about, or they don't run and rush right away and get their building permit, or something happens. It's not often that it happens, but it can happen. So the state does count building permits issued. So once a developer comes in and gets a permit to build the project, that is when we get to count our net new units towards the city's housing supply and towards meeting our RHNA. So while the first year in 2023 kind of started off as a slow start with 32 units that received building permits, we did make quite a bit of gains in planning applications that were approved that totaled to 410 units approved in 2023. So moving from kind of that middle bullet to the top bullet, this is the good news, that we have approved that many units in 2023. And of those units, 47 are dedicated for very low income households, 33 for low income, 1 moderate, and then 328, or the remaining number of those units, were in the above moderate or market rate income category. So hopefully next year when we're doing the report, those 410 units will have received building permits issued, and that we can make a little bit of a bigger dent out of the gate into our housing element cycle. Of projects that received final inspections or certificates of occupancy, we have 27 new units that came online ready to be occupied in 2023. And then just going back to those building permits issued, most of those were accessory dwelling units. So that's we're doing really quite well in the activity of accessory dwelling units being submitted, approved, and receiving their building permits. So this slide here is just kind of a summation, and this is in the staff report, which really provides a lot more detail about our regional housing allocation number. In the table on the right-hand side, we have a total of 2,735 units that is our RHNA obligation for the 8-year planning cycle, and that is broken down into different income levels. A majority of these units, if you kind of look on the left-hand side in the green column, are in the very low and low income categories. And also in the moderate category, you can see above moderate is actually, if you add all those up, it's actually less than what's in the below market rate categories. And this is simply because of the need that we have in our city and in our community for these below market rate units, or units that are available to those that are making less than the area median income. So again, we issued building permits for 32 units. There also is a provision from the state that allowed us to count the units that received building permits from June 2022 until the time our housing element was adopted. So those represent 14 units. So together there's 46 units right off the bat that we can take credit for in the above moderate or market rate income category. And just as a reminder, the Commission may remember that 2,735 units was our RHNA obligation, but what we actually planned for in our housing element was more than that, reaching a total of 3,173 units that we're planning for, that our sites provide for. And this was intentional, used as a buffer, simply to ensure that we can meet our RHNA obligation, not really while we are counting on the sites that we identified, we wanted to add a little bit more because things change and some units may go elsewhere, or some sites that we anticipate, maybe they don't produce as much as we would hope. So it was a good idea, and a lot of other cities also planned for a certain amount of buffer units. In terms of the programs, as I mentioned, these are action items the city is committing to, and there's quite a bit of programs. And in the report itself, there is a robust amount of detail on the status and information about these programs that really center on ensuring adequate sites, how the city will assist in ensuring there's adequate housing in the community. That could be financial assistance and other ways of assisting, removing governmental constraints, continually modifying our procedures and zoning standards to removing all potential perceived and real constraints to the production of housing and the preservation of housing, and including, finally, promoting equal opportunities. So all of the action items are centered around these 5 focus areas or categories. If the commission is interested in learning more about those, I would recommend us coming back where we can talk about what our focus areas are right out of the gate. But since it's the first housing element cycle, there's a handful of things that have been accomplished, but certainly a lot more that's on our plate that we're looking towards. But we think we're making really good progress. As the commission is aware, a lot of good progress has been made by our colleagues in current planning who are tirelessly working and refining the objective design standards for single family, for SB 9 type of units. And now what we're really focusing on this year are objective design standards for multifamily and mixed-use housing. So we can certainly provide more detail on that, but suffice to say, a lot of the detail is in the report, and it gives everyone a good indication of what we committed to and kind of where we're starting from and where we're going with all of that. So the next steps, this is essentially, there's no action to take. We are required to provide a venue to present our progress on the housing element, and we are doing that both at the Planning and Transportation Commission level, and we also will be doing that with the City Council on next Monday, March 25th. And thereafter, we would submit the report to the State Department of Housing and Community Development by their deadline, which is April 1, 2024. So that concludes my presentation, and if the Commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's great, and I'll save comments and questions. But let's start maybe with Commissioner Roof. Questions? Or yeah.
Sure, a couple questions. Is it possible to, does it make sense to compare how the actual number of applications and permits tracks against the goal?
Yes. For example, the number of applications that were approved, those 410 units, should they get their building permit. And let me make sure I understand the question. I think what you're wondering is, can we sort of forecast what's coming in the future years? And the answer to that is yes, we can, because what the state requires us to do, which is a lot more than they asked us to do in prior years, is to indicate how many planning applications are coming through the pipeline. And what they're really looking for are applications that are deemed complete, meaning we received all of the necessary and required application submittal materials, and they are complete and sufficient enough for staff to evaluate the project against. So that's kind of the first milestone, is of applications submitted, which ones are the ones that are deemed complete, and those can, are likely to be approved in the very near future. And then following that, we indicate how many applications, how many units were actually approved, and the state wants to know of those units, how many are below market rate, and so forth. And then finally, after that, how many applications received building permits. So there's sort of this progression along the entitlement process that allows us to somewhat forecast what we can, to kind of give us a reasonable forecast of what we can anticipate in the coming years. So I would say, based upon the information we collected from those planning approvals, it feels and looks like we're gonna, hit the ground running. But because those applications have not received their building permits yet, we can't count them. So those are the 410 units. And of those 410 units, of that amount, 242 come from 11 El Camino Real, about 80-something townhomes come from Alameda de las Pulgas, and then there were, I think, about 34 all low-income units at 1232 Cherry. So all of those together, combined with the what we really are starting to see is this trend of kind of like a flow, a good flow, if you will, of accessory dwelling units continually being applied for, approved, and issued building permits. So those are all coming in as brand net new units that are adding to our housing stock.
Thank you. And I have another question, but I'll wait for the second round.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Commissioner Castaneda?
Just following up on Commissioner Roof, this is the first time, of course, you've had to do this. But in one sense, I suppose your forecast is also based on some comparisons with the amount of applications and approved applications from other years. So does that factor in also on your ability to say that we're on track?
Well, this is the first year of this particular cycle of 2023. So we sort of, from prior years, we essentially hit a reset button. And when we hit that reset, we up-leveled or increased the number of units that we're tracking our progress against. In the prior cycle that ended at 2023, our RHNA obligation was 596 units. And we met that number in total, but what we didn't meet of the 596, a certain amount were set aside for below market rate units. We didn't meet that, but that's something that the state and the methodology for assigning a new number, this new number of 2735, which includes a certain amount of below market rate, is essentially what constitutes our reset. So as we track, we're tracking against that number. So we sort of let go of our past obligation. That's kind of done. And that's evaluated and determines what our next RHNA obligation is. So now we're working against the 2,735 number.
Thank you. I appreciate this report. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Castaneda. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa, for the report. I had two questions. One, I'm looking on Table B, the fact that we did not permit any affordable units at all is, I know, a sad statement about the lumpiness of real estate projects and the amount of resources we've got. But I'm wondering if we know what next year looks like for permitting any restricted affordable units.
Yes, we have. Sorry about that. Microphone on. We have 47 very low income units that if they get their building permit, again, this is what's approved, but what we'll be able to count for next year are of these 410 units, any of them that get issued their building permit this year in 2024, it will count. So we anticipate, and there's no reason why this shouldn't move forward. 1232 Cherry will definitely move forward. That's a 100% affordable housing project. So we feel pretty confident they're going to get their building permit this year. In fact, I believe that they submitted their application very recently, and it's under review by the building division now. So that's a very good sign. And 11 El Camino Real, I don't know what the status is of that, but my understanding is that Summerhill will be submitting their application for a building permit this year, and they have affordable units as part of that rental project.
Great.
And then, yes. So, and then if Alameda de las Pulgas submits a building permit, a certain amount of those townhomes are set aside for below market rate.
Those 10 for low
that
income.
one, the timing is a little bit less clear, but certainly 11 El Camino Real and 1232 Cherry, we're feeling pretty confident that those will get issued building permits this year.
Okay. Thanks. My other question was there anything from the policy work plan that you thought was worth calling out as a decent accomplishment?
Yes, well, it's kind of obvious, but it's very big, and we did it, and we know that we did it, and we take credit for it, because when the state says come up with goals and objectives to make sure you have enough sites, well, we did that by amending our zoning ordinance, by really increasing the allowable density, going from 50 units to the acre to 120 units to the acre, to going from 4 stories to 6 stories. And we put that as an action item intentionally in our housing element, because even though we were doing it, we were bringing forward the policy document and the zoning ordinance together on a parallel track. We want to get credit for it. It's something that we have to do. So certainly that's an obvious one, but that one's definitely checked off. And I would say partially completing the objective design standards is another big one, which did include objective design standards for single family, ADUs, SB 9 units, so those can move forward in a more efficient manner and give clear direction to developers, property owners, what the expectations are for those projects. So I would count that one as another good one to get credit for. And then there's some financial assistance programs that we have. I won't be able to list them off the top of my head, but these are standard and typical that the city commits to every year. And so those are also ones that, we identified in our housing element that the city would continue to provide support for, and they've done that to outside housing groups or agencies. And so that would be another example of something that we completed and will continue to do on an ongoing basis.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Lisa. Many action items jumped out at me. One of them was for the city to conduct an annual review of our density bonus, looking at density, height, and parking standards that we have in our zoning ordinance, and to identify if we need any additional incentives. And this stuck in my mind because we heard so many times from you that San Carlos has many small lots. And we need to see how the rollout is of the development of those small lots and if our incentives are in line to make that happen. So I really appreciated that action item. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, one of the things that we didn't have at the beginning or the initial writing or creating of these policies was the provisions of AB 2097, which allows projects to not require, or essentially would limit the city from requiring parking for projects that are within 1/2 mile of rapid bus transit or the Caltrain station. So certainly along El Camino Real, where we see some smaller lots, those are harder to redevelop and meet the parking requirement, but because now we have AB 2097, it could make these a little bit easier. So that is a new provision that just came online. Maybe developers are still learning about it. Maybe not every developer, maybe the large ones know about it, but it could be that, maybe some property owners would find it interesting. So a lot of the work that we will also be doing this year is communicating the changes in these new provisions, providing brochures or handouts at the counter so that, folks are really aware of some of the regulations that have been relaxed, or new incentives that are coming online that might make it easier for these projects maybe to pencil now or turn over, or maybe in years past they could have been some constraints or some challenges with those small sites. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Garvey. And for my part, Lisa, I think great to see the report, and I think we'll all look forward to hearing about the Cherry Street, and the El Camino projects receiving building permits, and know that have had a very good first year and a half in our new RHNA allocation. I also just wanted to say I appreciate your reminding, at least me, that so much of meeting, call it 2,800 new units are going to come through some bigger, lumpier projects. Just the quick math says we're going to need 2 or 3 big projects receiving building permits every year. What strikes me, 60, 80 units in order to get to that number, assuming that the flow of smaller projects comes through. So, which then led me to, what is the mechanism that the city has for learning, every 6 months or every year, what's going on in other jurisdictions where they seem to have either more success or less success with policy, so that we could reflect on what we might want to do in 2 years to, change the game if we're not seeing what we'd like. So how do we coordinate?
Yeah, I think that's a starting point and a really good venue for that type of discussion is through 21 Elements, the 21 different jurisdictions, including the county in San Mateo, that convene on a regular basis. And they have robust agendas where we bring up new laws, we talk through them, we also will share and provide information about what projects are happening in different cities, lessons learned, kind of sharing across jurisdictions what policies or incentives, like how is San Carlos making this work, or what might another city be doing. So I think those are very helpful, and we have staff both in advanced planning and current planning that attend those meetings and participate. So I think that's a good venue for us to continue to do that. In fact, I think that's probably the best venue that we have at this point. We could also, kind of look at different projects as case studies, but if we're wanting to know how we're kind of stacking up against our peers and what's happening, we really use the 21 Elements as a platform for that.
Great. Well, thanks for that reminder. You've mentioned that in the past, and we can always. We're probably smarter as a region than as an individual jurisdiction, and we all have common goals. So good to know that we can learn.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to share, because I think this is really exciting. One of the action items in the housing element, I mean, there's many, right, has to do with ADUs and encouraging and facilitating that. And I think, what we're doing is working. I think maybe, Andrea, if you want to speak, we've received so many more ADUs than we have in the past, and we're looking to participate in a resource center. So maybe this is a good opportunity to share a little bit about that.
Sure, thank you. It's an example of how 21 Elements can really help at a regional level and help us combine resources with other cities. So 21 Elements is proposing a nonprofit ADU resource center, which would be modeled after the one in Napa and Sonoma. That's been really successful. And this would involve helping residents in any city that participates with pre-approved plans, with understanding the different requirements, kind of helping guide them through the process. On the city side, it would help cities with, interpretations that come up, new state laws, helping with reporting for HCD, and perhaps, most excitingly for cities, helping track affordability when possible of ADUs, which is something that's pretty difficult to do. So a lot of cities have the choice of whether to participate or not. The nonprofit, I believe, would have a full-time director and 1 or 2 full-time staff people. So in order to participate, each city has to commit a certain number of funds each year, which varies depending on the number of cities. So we are bringing forward, as part of the next the mid-year budget cycle next month, a proposal for San Carlos to participate in this. And we think, based on the success of Napa and Sonoma, it'll not only be a good success in terms of producing the units, it'll help free up staff resources to work on other things. And really, I think most of the cities are interested. And it's also they've received grant funding from a few different sources already. So it's a pretty exciting project, and we're excited to participate if we can move forward with that.
Great. Thanks to both of you for reflecting on that. And Commissioner Roof, I think you had a follow-up.
I did. Could you remind me what the potential impact of introducing zoning changes to the northeast area has on the current RENA cycle?
Yes, great question. Thank you for asking that question. So the Northeast area is moving forward with housing in mind. It went to the City Council. You all saw the land use scenario that was under consideration, and the Council did agree to incorporate housing into that area. And our preliminary estimates are landing on somewhere to the tune of 1,800 units that we could obtain, that land use modification would yield. And so those are 18 units that were not contemplated in this housing element, of course. They're not on the table today. However, once that area is zoned for housing and a project comes forward, gets approved, and gets issued that building permit, those number of units do get to count towards this cycle. So they're new units that, are fortunate enough to come up and help us meet this cycle's RENA. So that's the good news, is that type of housing production in that area, if it takes off, will help us with our current RENA obligation. So they would count once it's approved, gets it issued the building permit. Yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner Roof. This isn't an item for any kind of a vote, but I was thinking maybe we should open it up for public comment just to see if anyone has comments. So let me just test whether there's anything to add at this time from commissioners. Okay. If you're following along remotely and you have some reflection or comment that you'd like to make on this report regarding our progress on housing element, now's the time. Thank you for being patient. And we'll give you just a little bit of time to please raise your hand on Zoom, at which point Lynette will take a roll and record anyone who might like to speak. Record your name, that is. Lynette, do you see any hands being raised?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, let's just give it another little bit and then we'll move forward. And none?
None.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you nonetheless. Final comments before we close out this item? Commissioner Roof?
A little one. Can you remind me what the median income number is, and is that a fixed number or is that a moving target?
Let's see, can I move this back? Let me just go back to this slide here. So at the bottom, the current area median income in San Mateo County, I took notes earlier, I thought this might come up, my background notes. The area median income in San Mateo County is $175,000, and it further is calibrated based upon household size and by income category. So for San Mateo County, the area median income is $175,000.
Is that for a household of 4? Thank you.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Thank you, Andrea. Andrea knows this one off the top of her head. Impressive.
Thank you, Commissioner. And well, therefore, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate the update, and good to know that we're moving forward on our numbers, and we'll look forward to seeing how 2024 plays out. Okay, agenda item number 8: reports, correspondence, and general information. 8A: reports on recent City Council actions. Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. First up, 308 Phelps, which you recently approved, did go to City Council and was approved. It will be going for its second reading and adoption on the 25th, so next week, and then will become effective 30 days after that. The council also adopted the Northeast Area Overlay District, and I believe that's already had its second reading. So it'll be effective very shortly. And then last but definitely not least, Kristen Clements was reappointed to the Planning and Transportation Commission. Very excited about that. And that's what I have for council actions.
Very good, thank you. B, Planning and Transportation Commission comments or reports. Vice Chair.
Yes, I just wanted to report that I attended a training on new legislation, new laws. I saw Andrea there. That was sponsored by 21 Elements, and I thought it was helpful. And if anyone would like to get a summary of the new state laws, I have one. We can send out a link to the I'm forgetting, is it Goldfarb who created it? So yeah, I think that might be helpful. And we did a couple exercises to see if we understood what the laws said. And but you know, I have to say the 21 Elements events and trainings, I think it's worth it. You may learn something if you attend, but I also think it's really helpful to hear from other communities in our county to see what it is that they are thinking and doing. And, you know, and I want to say I'm always proud to represent San Carlos at meetings like that, because I feel like we are always on track for doing the right things here and supporting housing. So just wanted to report on that.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. And just one for me, I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that tonight is our new coordinator's first Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well prepped, look forward to working with you over time. Very good. C, correspondence.
No correspondence.
Okay, and D, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
So just wanted to update you on 2 items currently scheduled for the next meeting. One will be a pre-zoning annexation application, and the other will be an application for 4 new units at 1524 Cherry Street, which is about 1 block west of here, and that is currently a single-family residence, and so they will be coming forward for those 4 units. One thing of note with that application is it was deemed complete under our old code, so it does not have the minimum density requirements that are currently in place for current applications. And that is it.
Okay, very good, thank you. And last item on our agenda is number 9, public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on tonight's agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. So again, if you're following along from home, as there is no one here in the council chambers with a hand raised, please raise your hand on Zoom at this time, and Lynette will take the role of those and log you in for a comment. Lynette, raised hands?
There are none.
Okay, very good. And now?
None.
Okay, then with that, I will entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
I move that we close public comment.
Thank you. I will second. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. And with that, we are adjourned.